very often there's a dark side to the platforms as well. Because on the flip side, everybody else in the ecosystem, even if consumers get all of these things for free or at reduced prices, everybody else in the ecosystem ends up suffering if they are competitive to these platforms and the platforms are much bigger than them. The negotiating power is too skewed in the direction of these platforms in those cases. In the case of Amazon, for example, there's a conflict of interest every time a merchant comes on board, because Amazon itself is a merchant as well on its own platform. And so one of the researchers at Harvard Business School uncovered that Amazon regularly studies the data of what kinds of products are selling well on its platform. And if there are certain product categories that work very well with its Prime 2-day delivery schedule, it often gets into a competitive stance, acquires production facilities in that product category, and then organically pushes out the competitor without requiring them to move out. The algorithms just start favoring Amazon over the competitor. And so there's a conflict of interest that is often there between a platform and the other players in the ecosystem. There's the second issue that we often see, which is platforms change their policies as they grow. In the beginning, they want the ecosystem to come on board, so they make their policies extremely liberal. But as they scale, they switch their policies and work against the ecosystem. This happened on Facebook when a lot of companies created pages on Facebook, but as Facebook scaled, it started reducing the reach that companies had with their pages on Facebook and started asking them to pay for promoted posts. So this was an example of a change in policy that worked well for Facebook, but not so much for all the companies that invested a lot of dollars in gaining likes and fans on their page on Facebook. And we often also see platforms engaging in predatory practices where they start extracting much more from the ecosystem than they should be, and hence taking away the free agency that the others in the ecosystem should have. One example of this is Uber, for example. Uber, on the face of it, seems like it's an intermediary, and every driver is free to come in and participate on Uber as and when they want to. But behind the scenes, there's something much deeper that's happening. Because one of the policies that Uber has is that if you start rejecting a lot of rides, your rating starts going down, and you're not allowed to stay back on Uber in the long term. A lot of drivers are happy with Uber rides, but they're not happy with Uber pool rides, which requires them to go to multi-stop locations and get people from different locations. And so when these drivers try to start rejecting an Uber pool ride, their ability to get an Uber ride also decreases. And so Uber kind of creates a lock-in by creating the soft control where it says that if you don't accept enough rides, you will be kicked out of the system. So it's kind of taking free agency away from all of these drivers. And this is, again, something that we see as the dark side of some of these platform businesses that we see today. But having spoken about that, let's also look at what this means for other industries. In a lot of other industries, we don't have platforms that are growing at the same rate or reaching the same scale today. What's important is that we understand the dark side, and then we try to use that to help the growth of platforms in the other industries in a way that innovation is encouraged, but exploitation of the ecosystem is discouraged.